Welcome to the special bonus cut of I've Never Read Discworld The Light Fantastic. Additional features can be unlocked by viewing this on Spotify or YouTube.
Maybe that's as good a segue as any actually into the adaptation. So,
Comic or movie? What's your choice?
well, to set up
First.
both, I suppose, because it feels almost clever, even though it's complete accident that this story has been adapted. It was obviously first written as a novel. It's been adapted as a comic in I believe either the late 80s or early 90s. I could check. I have it right in front of me somewhere. Um, and it was also adapted as a TV movie much more recently in 2008. I cannot see the copyright notice on this comic. Um,
So,
it certainly looks like it was the 80s.
so The Color of Magic was illustrated by Stephen Ross and adapted by Scott Rockwell. First published in 1991 by Innovative
Oh, so
Publishing.
close, so close, so
Um,
close.
Corgi collected as a volume, and the next year, Innovative did the same with The Light Fantastic. Again, adapted by Scott Rockwell, the script, and with Stephen Ross on art again, with Joe Bennett coming in and adding to that. Four parts, then a single volume. Um,
As as you can tell by the authoritative way that Andy dispenses that information, he is a comics guy.
that's my
Is
thing.
that is
Yep.
that fair to say? By complete coincidence, I'm a TV guy, so this is a story that's been adapted for comics and for television. So, by pure coincidence, we're both relatively well placed to discuss those adaptations.
I remember reading some Innovative books when they came out, so they did an awful lot of TV adoptions. So I was reading the Quantum Leap books, and they were kind of okay.
Uh,
But according to Wikipedia, at some time during their operation between, I think it was 88 to 94, they were the number four publisher after the Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, who adapted everything brilliantly, and then you had
yeah.
Innovation.
Wow.
So
So this was a big-ish deal, this adaptation, I guess,
yeah,
in the comics world. Cool. Okay.
I
I mean, I
suspect
think
that would have been one of their better sellers.
yeah, and I mean, it looks great. And I'm not like when I read comics, I'm there for the writing. I'm not like a big art guy. I can't draw a straight line. But something, and at the time when I was reading it, I was like, this is a comic book. This is what comic books look like. But looking back at it, I'm like, I mean, it's beautiful. It reminds me a lot of that Ian Gibbons kind of British 80s style, but it's in full color, which I suppose would have been relatively rare at the time, Andy. Is that right? Or
Um, no, not
not
so much.
necessarily?
Well, yeah, that off. I don't know. It wouldn't have been on newsprint. I think. Yeah, there was a better quality of paper coming through there.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I mean it is, and it's it's very vibrant. All the wizards all have their own different color cloaks, and obviously, as we discussed, there's a lot going on in terms of these different precincts: Death's World, Flying Rocks, Gingerbread Houses, uh, demons from the dungeon dimensions. All this stuff's happening, and it looks tremendous. It really holds up. As
So
far as I'm concerned.
I should say I haven't seen this yet. But PJ talked me into treating myself. This is kind of the for those of us watching on video, I'm going to hold up the package I got from the Discworld Emporium, which has
So
my
jealous.
address on it.
Yeah,
If you
definitely.
want to write to me, there's little stickers from the Unseen University and the Thieves Guild, um,
And stamps.
stamps. Um, it has the word ook.
We didn't even talk about the librarian. Oh man.
Oh,
And
go for it. Go for it.
but we'll come back to him for sure. So
There's a little, another
if you know,
little
you know.
Discworld Emporium sticker. Um, I
So I'm
thought I
jealous.
would
Yeah,
open this up now.
I've never ordered anything directly from the Discworld Emporium. So I talked to Andy when I mentioned the fact that I'd read the graphic novel and that was my experience of this book. I don't think you needed much arm twisting to make this purchase, Andy, to be honest.
So
So we're currently, for those who aren't experiencing the video, we're currently attempting to unbox.
doing an unboxing like the kids do. on the YouTubes.
like 15 years ago.
Um,
It's
so
he's trying really hard to do it without wrecking all the cool stuff that they put
yeah,
on the front of the box.
what I can tell you offhand about the artists on this, um,
Oh yeah, cool. Do.
Stephen Ross is the lead artist. He's been he's pitched some work for Dark Horse and Tundra, but mostly he's working the indie underground stuff. I also a recent piece called Chesty Sanchez. I also noticed he's been following me on Twitter for a while, so
Wow.
maybe there's an option to meet up. Um, Scott Rockwell, who's a writer, has been active since '85 as an editor. This is really tough package to open. Um,
We're struggling with the multitasking here. I think that
yeah.
that's part of the problem. I think you should just try to open it and I'll narrate it. That might be funny. You have to hold it up. The pressure's on.
Right.
He's he's
There
he's
we go.
he's,
There we go.
he's working from the back now. Oh, he's something's come off there. So postal tip, hopefully nothing more precious than that. So that's cool, actually, isn't it? So that kind of British comics world. You guys have obviously crossed paths at least virtually before. And it's interesting to hear you say that his work is mostly in that kind of indie sphere, because I mean, I'm looking at a page with the trolls just randomly right now, and it's incredible. It's beautiful. And as you mentioned earlier, you know, in the story, when the red star is getting closer and everything, and like Warpork is bathed in a red glow, like he's doing that on the page, like, and you know, and he's painted it all. He's not just like putting some Photoshop filter on it or whatever. Oh, something is emerging from the box.
Oh, so I
Oh
thought
my.
this was a 2 volume set, but it's all been the 2 adaptations have been collected into one hardback that come with a nice little thank you if you ordered from the Discworld Emporium.
Oh, how nice.
Um,
I'll have to put some stuff on my Christmas list. Oh, so that's good. So now, so they're doing that as the Color of Magic and the Light Fantastic as one it's a hardback volume, I
yep.
assume, by the looks of it.
I get a thank you from the Guild of Thieves. Quite a nice. I'm guessing this is maybe about 400 pages.
Oh, that is nice. And that's just the Color of Magic and the Light Fantastic.
Yep, yep. So I
That
don't know if there's really an optimal way to. There's not really going to be an optimal way to show off my
probably
response
not.
on the pages. Maybe there we go, something like that. So I'm looking at Ron and Liesa riding dragons, and oh yeah,
But you see what I mean, right? I mean, it's quite lavish. Wow.
yeah. This Temple of Bel Shamharoth is suitably apocalyptic. Um,
That's something that actually because I hadn't read I still haven't read the Color of Magic adaptation, but like when the I'm looking at, oh, there's no page numbers, so that's not helpful. When the uh dungeon dimension demons, when they come through, you know, at the end of the Light Fantastic, and Rincewind has to fight them, like they're pretty grisly looking, you know. That kind of Lovecraftian horror, he's pulling that off as well. Like, I mean, you think about all those kind of stylistic clashes that are implied in the novel, like it's nothing, you know, it's nothing to these artists. Like it all comes together in the graphic novel beautifully. So now we're just sitting here reading comics, which is great. It's great radio.
that's what you come to the podcast for.
Yeah. But yeah, so there you go. If you want to see it for yourself, we'll plug the Discworld Emporium, obviously.
Yep.
And you're happy with your purchase?
Yeah, it's actually it's quite beautiful. It's a lot better than I expected it to be. Um, it- there's actually a story on Wikipedia. The illustrator, I think Steve Ross, drew the first issue of The Color of Magic, and Terry hadn't looked at it as stipulated in the contract. So he had to go back and redraw it, but obviously it is beautiful enough for the second, for the Light Fantastic, to have been commissioned the following year.
Yeah, well,
Following year.
if they did all 400 pages worth, they were obviously on to something. Yeah, great stuff. It really takes me back, I have to say. Yeah, I might have to, because I've never read. Now I feel like I really want to read The Color of Magic and do it all as one complete experience. So I might have to put that on my Christmas list.
There's a
Uh,
really good use of space, particularly in the first book. There's a lot of empty space is made use of. In the
mm.
Light Fantastic, you just get
Well, there's a lot going on.
wonderfully detailed splash pages, like I think it's the mountain
Oh
trolls
yeah,
coming alive.
yeah.
Um,
That's the stuff I was just looking at. Yeah, it's tremendous. It really is.
really elaborate stuff. Um, the colors are really impressive. They really sort of lay down the location that they're evoking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, and then I'm looking at the fight between uh Tryman and Rincewind, and it's just a lot of reds come on the final chapter, really, with the red star. Just is sort of everything colored as you might expect.
yeah. It's done really well. I mean,
Too.
I was like, and a couple of those pages are a little bit spooky. Like, the dungeon dimensions are referenced regularly ish through Rincewind series, and like, it's a novel, so it's open to your imagination to a degree, but like, you're reading a comedy book. At the end of the day, you're not necessarily picturing this like proper cosmic horror, but there's a couple of panels in this that are like, oh yeah, that's spooky. Is that Tryman with no eyes?
Oh
This,
gosh.
and it's all red, and yeah, it's pretty spooky. So that's awesome. I think they did a great job on it. Looking back now, I mean, that was, as I said, that was like the first graphic novel I ever read. Now I haven't read whatever thousands more. Looking back, I absolutely think it holds up. But you're the expert, so we'll have to get your verdict before we move on. Even
Yeah,
you're just a
well,
first impression verdict.
I mean, first impressions. I mean, it's a great big chunky book. It's about £17 UK. Um, so like really good value for money because it looks like an actual book, and the interiors, just really incredible art, much better than I'd expected. Innovative to be doing. It's 8 comics collected in there. Um,
Well, that's not bad.
and
That's
the
like
artists have taken that environmental approach to the coloring. It's phenomenal. I'm really looking forward to this.
cool, great. So
Uh,
there you go. There's an ironclad recommendation then from both of us, I think,
yeah.
on the graphic novel adaptation of the Light Fantastic and the Color of Magic.
I just mentioned
Not
a
in that
little bit
order.
more about the artist. So Scott Rockwell is the main artist on books 1 and 2,
Mm-hmm.
on both. So he has worked for pretty much every major comics publisher of the last 30 years.
And is he still doing it? He's still going?
He has, from around 2014 to 2018, Scott worked for IDW and Fantagraphics,
Oh yeah.
both great publishers. That's where the trail seems to end. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Joe Bennett, a Brazilian horror comic artist, innovative, were um, hiring a lot of Brazilians and really brought them into the American market
Mm.
to some acclaim. People like Mike Diodato, who worked in Flash and Impulse, who's brilliant. Um, the Light Fantastic appeared to have been Joe's first US work, from what I can
Mm.
figure out.
But the horror
He,
comics angle makes sense. Just based, what I was kind of alluding to with that stuff specifically at the end. That clicks now. I get it. Yeah. There you go. You can tell. I mean, he's all over that.
he is picked up by Marvel the very next year, or his
Ah.
work is out. No surprise. Nightmare Lee did co-creation.
Oh yeah.
Um, and like Scott, he'd spend the next 25 years working on every major with every major comics publisher, mostly with Marvel and DC, actually,
Mm.
culminating in the Eisner Award series, The Immortal Hulk with Al Ewing, which is
Oh yeah.
doing the rounds quite popularly. It came to a shattering end about this time last year.
Yeah.
and anti-Semitic imagery popped up in an issue of the Immortal Hulk.
Oh, that's right.
And then there was another political cartoon from 3 years previously was pulled up, arguing severe links from him. And
Oh man, that's the
earlier in the
same.
year,
That's the same
Marvel
guy.
said
No
that he
way.
was being removed from current assignments.
No way.
So
Huh. There you
yeah,
go. There's a
he's
bit.
been
Yeah.
cancelled.
Well, I mean, yeah, for good reason.
I didn't read the Immortal Hulk.
Oh, holy crap! I had no idea. Wow, that's a small world for you,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
And we were like so poised. I was so poised to start like singing some praises there and stuff because I had no idea of that connection. That's
I mean, it must be
absolutely
quite a
hilarious.
blow to him because his bibliography is massive. He's
Oh,
a
right,
really productive guy. He has worked. I mean, I think he had if I remember rightly, he had a 3 year exclusive with DC in the early 2000s.
right.
His work for Marvel has just been like you think of a Marvel Comics character, Joe Bennett's been on it.
Man,
So,
that's nuts.
yeah.
Crazy. Well, there you go. The bit
But
of
I'm
controversy.
looking
That's
forward to reading this.
yeah, yeah. Well, look, don't let it put you off. Obviously, this is one from the old days. Yeah, I'll stand over it. I think it's such a formative part of my Discworld experience that I'll never be able to not look at the Light Fantastic, specifically the graphic novel, in a fond light. But I was really interested to finally get round to watching the TV movies, the adaptations that Sky did in 2008. Based on the Color of Magic and the Light Fantastic. So they adapted them both as one TV event, as I think we would have called it in those days.
A pigment of your imagination.
That's a great tagline. I mean, you know, and I would be very surprised if Sir Cherry didn't have something to do with that. But I mean, it just shows you, like, Andy's just opened a hardback graphic novel, 400 pages long, doing that as one story. The TV adaptation treats it as one story as well. It just shows you what an idiot I was to jump into the middle of it. When I started reading.
It's sort of 2 hour, 2 hours, and they're pretty much by and large one book.
Yeah, but they're long. Like, they're long
Yeah,
adaptations. I
oh yeah.
mean,
Each is full movie length.
it's interesting how literary adaptations have changed even in the intervening. Oh well, I mean, I guess it's been 14 years, 15 years, I guess, since they probably started making it. But when we think of how, like, the big streamers approach adaptations, this is much more like just straight down the barrel. Oh, stripped over 2 nights, if I remember correctly. They showed it over Easter,
Easter Sunday,
2008.
Easter Monday, yeah.
So that meant 2 bank holidays. You sat down in front of your TV in the old days, like a caveman, and you watched 2 hours of Discworld on Sunday, and then you watched another 2 hours of Discworld on Monday. And it's just not how we consume TV anymore, right? And I think as a result of that, these just feel long, so long, right? But
right.
you watched them too, right? Yeah, and like, I love so much about them. I loved, and I hadn't seen them before. Like, I hadn't got around to watching it before. I'd watched the Hogfather adaptation, which is a later, confusingly and annoyingly for us because we can't talk about it. It's a later book in the series, but Sky adapted it first, and I thought it turned out quite well. But it's just one book, so it's just one movie. Whereas the biggest issue I have, as you can probably tell, is that trying to adapt the Color of Magic and the Light Fantastic all at once is just too much, right? Would you agree? I mean, you must be
Yeah,
like
oh yeah, yeah.
you were oversaturated with this story already because you've done nothing else for 2 months but read these books, and then
I
you sit
mean,
down and watch the
yeah.
movie.
You can see it in the Color of Magic. They take out the whole Belshammar temple scene is the most glaring sort of omission. And there's a few one-liners about Two Flower really wants to visit throughout, which kind of fun. But yeah, so I mean, even at that sort of near 2 hours length, it's gotta wonder if it might not be better as like 30 minute or 45 minutes.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah. You have to think that, in this day and age, if it was, say, a Netflix adaptation or an Amazon Prime thing or whatever, that's what it would be, right?
Absolutely.
We've been talking off air quite a bit about the Sandman adaptation, right? And I was surprised a little bit that they did short episodes, like 38 minute
Yeah, it was a
episodes
couple
for
of
the
those.
most part. But because they were doing not one for one single issue comic adaptations, they were in that ballpark, and Neil Gaiman's so heavily involved in that adaptation that they didn't try to overcook it in the way that I feel like this is kind of overcooked story wise, because they had to do this big tentpole bank holiday TV and event, which is just something that doesn't exist anymore, you know. And I think, yeah, if we did that 30-40 minute streamer adaptation, you probably would have got your Temple of Bel Shamaroth, um, because it feels like a very, very entertaining or potentially entertaining episode of television, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the length is a problem if you're going to, if you find it a problem, really. But to put it in
Um,
context, what you were talking about, when this was made, Russell T Davies was on Doctor Who, and it was on tea time on Saturdays again. It was, yeah, event television.
so this is around the time, so 2007, 2008, it's around the time I started working in television. So not on nothing as lofty as this. So I do have a bit of,
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. We'll
I
come
have,
back
well,
to that.
no, we won't. I have some fondness uh, for this particular time in British television. And I think a lot of what I like about the adaptation is probably as a result of that. It's in the casting. It's a lot of familiar faces from that time. Some of whom unfortunately are no longer with us. But the big one, the one that needs talked about first, of course, is Rincewind. And it's the most controversial choice probably
Hmm.
in the cast. So it's David Jason. So if you don't know already, most people will know as Del Boy from Only Fools and Horses.
He
And
fell through the bar, didn't he?
yeah, well, as we've all seen, I believe he also
David
dressed up
is-
as Batman one time as well.
Yes.
So
And the voice of Danger Mouse for older listeners, viewers.
there you go. I actually don't think I knew that. That's good trivia. Um, but that, as so subtly alluded to there by Andy, like this dude is old. Even in 2008, he's got to be pushing 70, right?
Yeah, that didn't bother me. I think is a bit of a problem for some. Uh, Rincewind supposedly is 40.
Yeah.
That
Now,
older
as you
I
know,
was fine with.
I'm on the fence about Rincewind already, and this didn't help. You know, so like casting some old dude who I can picture as nobody else except Elboy, regardless of the beard or whatever. That didn't help. Kind of endear me to Rincewind, unfortunately. So I went in with low expectations, and there's a few especially some deliveries of some of the lines that I recognized that I thought he did do quite well. And I get it, and I know it was a passion project for him,
Yeah.
and he
Oh, he
loves,
begged for this role.
yeah,
He wanted to do it 15 years before it was
which is
made.
when he should have done it. So his love for the character shines through, and that does help a little bit. But for somebody like me who's already on the fence about the character, I think it's kind of a big ask. I was much more pleasantly surprised with Sean Astin from Lord of the Rings, Samwise from Lord of the Rings as Two-Floor. I thought that was quite inspired.
I love the idea of an American playing two floor.
Yeah,
Um,
I thought that was perfect. And I know at the time there was, I don't know, I hesitate to say backlash because I feel like I'm engineering controversy, but I think there were probably an assumption amongst some fans that Two-Floor would be Asian.
yes, I think the lines from like Oriental or exotic and
Yeah.
um,
I think actually changing that for TV was probably a good change to make.
yeah.
I think the American tourist, the naive American tourist, is such a good trope without putting you into troubled racial stereotype waters. Because like you always got to punch up. Never, don't punch down. So punch up at the white rich American people
And
all day long.
the director and Sean managed to make too floor. I mean, there's no there's no poking and prodding and trolling the American tourist. He comes across with the naive charm and
Yeah,
the eagerness, and all his virtues are there.
yeah, that's I think
You know,
that's
I'm
yeah,
excited.
not just the fact that they cast an American, the fact that they cast Sean Astin in particular, who you know, obviously the overlapping fandoms between Lord of the Rings and Discworld, you know, the Venn diagram is probably like a circle. So, you know, he's such a well-loved character in that franchise, and he brings a lot of that charming energy to this franchise. I think that's just a no-brainer. It's a complete win-win. Something I mentioned earlier that we could now come back to, I guess, is how Tryman is portrayed in the movie. And they have to do a lot more with Tryman because they kind of front load some of that storyline. That they cut away from some of the color of magic stuff to some of the Tryman Galder stuff from the Light Fantastic, and how Tryman is portrayed is quite different. But I mean, they've got another heavyweight British actor in there. They've got the great Tim Curry in as Tryman,
And he's
he's
got so much energy with the part.
he's not written that way in the on the page, is he? You know, he's written as much more serious,
Oh,
not
hashtag not my Tryman.
right. But I mean, it's Tim Curry. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
nobody's gonna hashtag Tim Curry.
hashtag it's Tim Curry.
Yeah. But he's doing almost the opposite. He's got this big shit eating grin on his face the whole time.
Yes.
And what a grin. I mean, right? it's it's Pennywise's grin. So he's threatening and devious, but in a different way, in a way that you love to hate, in a way that
Yeah.
you love to hate
Yeah.
anytime Tim Curry plays that kind of antagonistic role. So I thought that was a good choice in terms of something that was like a marked departure from how it was written in the book. I thought that was quite an inspired choice. One that was through no fault of his own didn't get the screen time he deserved, just because there's a big role for the character in this book. Jeremy Irons as the patrician, as Lord Itinerary. I I would see him play that role again tomorrow, because there's not much for him to do in that story, but they're obviously thinking, get him cast, get the fans hyped about it. Maybe we'll bring him back. I mean, he's got like 2 scenes or something, right? But it's Jeremy Irons. I thought he was great, and you could tell when I was asking you last month, like, you know, what you think about Lord of Itinerary, and you don't have any opinions because he doesn't have that much to do in the story. But when you see Jeremy Irons play him, right, there's something there, right?
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's a shame. I think that we probably won't see that again, unfortunately. Uh, Having Brian Cox as the narrator, in this world now,
Good
where he's like
choice. Yep.
he's huge, you know, with Succession and stuff. Though we think of him as this like mean spirited Rupert Murdoch bastard. To have him basically be the Terry Pratchett proxy is
Oh, that's another spoiler zone for me. Yeah,
oh yeah,
I
sorry about that.
love Succession because I've got the whole media nerd thing going.
Yeah, I mean, but he's so versatile, so you know he breathes life into that as well. Christopher Lee is the voice of death. I mean, that's a no brainer,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
You know, he's sorely missed, but that, like, and he had performed it before in one of the animated adaptations. I thought by far the most inspired casting, and I imagine everybody's already ahead of me on this because of how much I've been talking about him. David Bradley as Cohen the Barbarian.
A lot of fun. A lot of fun to watch.
So if anybody doesn't want to quickly rush off to IMDb, David Bradley, you will know him probably from the Cornetto trilogy, from Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright's movies, where he's like the old sergeant in Hot Fuzz, isn't he? Is he the old sergeant, or he's the guy on the farm? He's in it anyway, and he's like, I can't imagine. And he's the caretaker in Harry Potter. That's actually how people know him. I'm not a big Harry Potter fan, but like that's a much bigger franchise. That's definitely how people know him. And that's just inspired casting. And he wasn't as old then, obviously, as he is now, but he looks the part in like the barbarian loincloth with the long beard, and he does the voice, all the great dialogue Andy was alluding to earlier, and is like not that creepy. when it comes to the whole Beth and stuff, because you're thinking like that storyline, as you mentioned earlier, like it's written quite well, and that like it doesn't feel creepy, even though it's meant to be a 70-year age gap. So you've got David Bradley, and you have, oh gosh, her name escapes me. Oh, you've helpfully written it down for me. Laura Haddock, who I recognized as Allison from the In-Betweeners movie. She must have been literally like 16 or 18 when this was made. And they've got good chemistry in this.
Yeah, yeah. Laura Haddock's fantastic in this.
And she did pick up an award for the In-Betweeners movie, if I remember correctly, like a Best Newcomer award or something like that. So yeah, so the fact that she's able to come into this as a relatively fresh performer and have this relationship with David Bradley, who's playing like a 90-year-old barbarian, and for it to come across as quite sweet and not really problematic, and especially considering it was made in 2007 or 2008, where we weren't as nuanced about that stuff then as we are now, let's be honest. But it has aged well. I think that is one of the things about this production.
Yeah.
Unlike the special effects, unlike the runtime, that has aged pretty well.
You know what? I thought special effects were really fantastic. There wasn't anything that looked too stagey to me. They had a 7 million budget, which I
For the
guess
time, that's
is
pretty
pretty
good.
healthy.
Yeah, for that time, for 2007, 2008, Sky TV, two-parter. Yeah, that's pretty good. And
I,
I think
I
it,
I remember starting to watch it and thinking, right, what are they? How are they going to do the luggage? How badly is this going to screw up? But
yeah, but they just
fantastic.
framed the legs out most of the time.
Yeah.
So you could just like you couldn't see the legs. You get to see the legs in the wide shot, and then anything closer than that, they just panned up, and you just see
The
it rocking around.
animation with the movements,
Yeah,
the character really came out there.
I was doing some really explanatory hand gestures there, for those of you who aren't watching the video. So that's kind of the big
Um,
the big joy for me watching that was seeing all those like really top shelf performers. I probably would be a bit more critical of like the effects and stuff like that, and probably the reason for that is that, you know, when you're not engaged in the story, when the story is kind of a bit sluggish, that's when you start noticing stuff like that. Whereas if the pace is high and you're remaining engaged, you're much more forgiving. But certainly for that time period, for 2007, 2008, as you say, on a budget about 7 or 8 million, which is less than an episode of any of these big fantasy shows that are out now. And it's a shame that they didn't do any more after this, although obviously events overtook them. And we should mention, I suppose, that Sir Terry appears in this, and that was actually like took me by surprise and like sort of made my heart skip a little bit to kind of see him on screen, and he's performing lines, and he's all there mentally, and he's being funny, and it's just like just makes you remember that, you know, that this was 14, 15 years ago, and like everything that happened in between was yet to happen, and it's sad, you know. And that's
I
all,
recognized him straight off. He's got a very distinguished appearance.
and he delivers his gag, like he
Yeah,
has a line in it and stuff, and
lands.
he kind of nails it and
Of
stuff.
course.
But yeah, then everything, and a lot of boring TV politics, industry politics is kind of behind why no more of these were made, and the rights to various stories are a bit all over the place. And other adaptations have been made that we'll probably talk about as we get to them. But yeah, these kind of Sky TV ones, which are in order of production: Hogfather, The Color of Magic, and Going Postal. Like they are very of their time, but they're very charming. And if you're a fan, you know, I don't know if I'd recommend watching any of them cold. I think if you watch them after you've read the book, and kind of treat them like just as like a fun little extra, you know,
Yeah,
just
like
especially for things like casting and how they treat different characters, you know, it's more of a fun curiosity. It's like, yeah, as I say, like a something to add to your experience, but not necessarily a standalone experience in and of itself. That's my opinion anyway, but I would probably be a bit more critical of a TV production perhaps than Andy would, or perhaps than you would. I don't know.
well, one of the reasons that I waited for the graphic novel was I kind of have a problem doing adaptations right after the source material
Oh,
because
okay.
they're different stories. Um, so just sort of
Um,
let that sink in. And I think with future ones, I might do a bit of a gap. Maybe we can do an adaptations episode.
yeah, sure.
Um, that'll be good. There's a lot of really good stuff in this Sky adaptation. The transparent dragons, the fight with Rincewind and Liesa hanging upside down.
They did do that better than I expected because that is tough. I mean, that's pure fantasy prose where you just write whatever the hell you want because you don't have to worry about visualizing it. And then some poor bastard comes along 30 years later, 20 years later, and has to figure that out. But yeah, but again, like for me, just having David Jason fighting upside down in a cave full of dragons, like, I don't know, man. Give me like, well, it should have been Nigel Planer, I guess. And he is in it as well. He gets to be in it. But I remember reading somewhere that Terry Pratchett had pictured Nigel Planer as Rincewind, you know, David Jason's sidekick from Only Fools and Horses.
I love this story about the premiere of the adaptation. I'll just read from the film was premiered at the Curzon Cinema London on 3rd of March 2008. The event was covered in several major newspapers after David Jason, somewhat inebriated, got into the wrong limousine by mistake when from departing from the premiere. I mean, it's very typical sort of tabloid hack.
Where did
Now,
he end
that's the
up?
sort of
I
trail
feel
that I
that,
follow instead of art
but
and culture by a master. But heck,
but straight away I'm like, what happened? Where did he end up? He got in the wrong limousine. Was never seen again. That's a good story, to be fair. I guess, yeah, okay. I could probably go on and on about Discworld fan casting and stuff like that for forever, and
oh,
we'll
yeah,
definitely revisit it.
should we do a quickie alt casting
Oh,
session?
I don't know. I mean,
Can you? I barely have anything really.
it's tough. So if I run down the list, the main list, I think David Jason definitely not right. Um, I think Nigel Planer when he was younger, like Nigel Planer as Rodney, yes. Who would you go for now? I don't know. Maybe Nicholas Hoult. Even he's probably getting to the right age. He's British. He's Q in the recent James Bond films. He's Beast in the recent X-Men films. Sean Astin, perfect. Tim Curry, perfect. Jeremy Irons, perfect. Brian Cox, I mean, was good, certainly. I'm hearing mixed reports about the new Audible adaptations where Bill Nye is the voice of the narrator. Some people seem to like it, some people don't. I haven't heard it yet, but I think Brian Cox is a tough act to follow. Christopher Lee is the voice of Death, perfect. Um, David Bradley, as mentioned, perfect. And I
Oh,
mean,
great choices.
yeah, Laura Haddock again, yeah, perfect. Karen David was good as Liesa, but like if you were casting today, I think there's a lot of good choices there. Colleen Wing from the Iron Fist TV show. I think she would be good. But it's a similar vibe, you know. I mean, I think Karen David was bringing that kind of energy, but like 14 years ago. So, yeah, I mean, as I say, that's the one thing that I was a big takeaway for me from this project was how well cast it was.
Thank you for listening, watching. I hope you enjoyed that. And you can find I've Never Read Discworld at all major podcast platforms and at Discworld GNU on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you.